Superman and Lois, episode 9, Loyal Subjects. With a J. Well, yeah, it is with a J. Or is it Subjerks? I forget how they spelled it. So anyway, in this particular episode, Lois, she's still investigating Morgan Edge, and now she's basically calling in the cavalry. You know, she's on the case. Like, her boss is on the case. She's finally got Clark in on it, because I guess, like, she woke up one day and realized, like, hey, my husband's a reporter as well. So, you know, so she's got everybody on it. She's even got, you know, Lana Lane, she's still on it, and they're investigating Morgan Edge's entire operation because they're trying to figure out what's going on. Lois even said, she said that Morgan Edge, he bounced around to different towns, but for some reason he decided to stay here. And there has to be a reason specifically why he's choosing to stay in Smallville, other than it, you know, being a plot for the show. So so, you know, so they're looking into it. And the episode started with the camera going into Morgan Edge's office, and Morgan Edge looking very creepily, talking about, I can give you everything you desire. And I was just like, okay. you know, but but he's clearly talking to somebody, but you don't actually get to see who the person is that he's talking to. But they do show you, you know, like clips of him talking to the other people that he's recruited so far. And then these people who went through the process, like the Asian woman, you know, that got accepted last week, like they showed her going through the process of getting the superpowers. And then it changed her, because before, you know, she was very like docile, you know, like she was kind of like shy and like quirky, and now she's all like confident, and she's just like, oh, you know, like I work for Morgan Edge and we have morning tea and everything's perfectly fine. It's to the point where even Lana was like, hold up. Like Lana was just like, there's something going on around. Yeah. So, but she was talking to Lois about it, and she was just like, yo, I don't know what it is, but she's like, everybody seemed like they perfectly fine. She said, if anything, whatever the process was that they went through with Morgan Edge made them happier. She was like, you know, they're just like extra jolly for, you know, like for like no reason. But, you know, she said, I'll keep digging into it and we'll see if we come up with something. And then in the meantime, you know, Clark, he ended up ear hustling all the way to Mexico, and I didn't realize his super hearing extended that far, but he heard about like a robbery or guns or some sort of violent thing going on in Mexico. So he flew all the way to Mexico. And when he flies to Mexico, you know, he stops the bank robbery, and then they do the thing where like the criminals try to shoot him and it doesn't work. And then, you know, but before he walked in the room, he kind of like held his chest and like took a breath for a second, as though like he was having difficulty breathing. But he still goes in, you know, he's able to repel all the bullets. He beats up all the criminals. He knocks them 50 feet in the air. He beats everybody up. He saves the day. Everybody's cheering. They're like, oh, go, go, Superman, you know, and then, you know, so but then, you know, you could tell like, he kind of felt like some kind of way, like he was being affected somehow, but he shrugged it off and he went back home. You know, Morgan Edge ended up buying some ads in Lois's paper, telling people to come on down and get you some of this Morgan Edge juice. And then Lois saw that. She got mad. She went down to Morgan Edge's office and she was telling people like, don't do it. You know, like, don't take it. You know, like he's deceiving you. And then Morgan Edge like spoke to her. He was like, yo, come on, man. He's like, now it's just sad. He was just like, yo, what happened to the investigative reporting? He was just like, now it's just kind of pathetic. And then two of them like jousted back and forth. And then she's like, I'm gonna bust you, son of a bitch. And then because she was just like, I have, you know, proof, you know, that you're trying to turn people into Kryptonians. And he was like, what proof? She was like, oh, the two dead people and your secretary. And he was just like, yeah, that's not gonna work. So, you know, so he basically told her, he was like, come on, Lois. He's like, either get on board or get out of Morgan Edge's way, you know. And then Lois, you know, she gets upset and she leaves. She goes back home, and then she sees Clark, you know, tending to his wounds. And then she was surprised, because she was just like, first of all, how are you bruised? You know, she's like, did they use kryptonite bullets? And he was like, nah, they use regular bullets. He's like, but for some reason, like, it bruised. And then he, you know, then he started thinking, because remember in the last episode, he got shot with that canister full of like kryptonite smoke. So he was just like, you know, maybe the kryptonite smoke is affecting me somehow, and it's putting me in a situation, you know, where it's like it's weakening me, which is why I'm starting to feel the effects of certain things. Nothing really too bad happened yet, so we'll just play it by ear and see what happens. Jordan now, both he and Sara, they're at school because, you know, Sara, she's entering in the school talent show. And because Jordan can play the piano, he decided to play the piano for one of the songs that Sara can sing. So the two of them are on the piano, they're playing the piano, and then out of nowhere, Jordan sneezes. And when he sneezes, there's like ice all over his hand. And I was just like, ew. But then he did it again. And then like more ice came out. So now it's like, oh snap, like his freeze breath is kicking in. but it's kicking in the form of like allergies. And then he just got up, like ran away from Sara and dipped. He immediately used the machine to go call his dad. Superman shows up, and then he's just like, what the F? And then they take him back to the house. Jordan's like shivering in the corner. He's like sneezing, more snow's coming out coming out of his body. Jonathan comes home. He's just like, yo, Sara told me that you bounced on her, like, what's really good. And they're just like, oh, your brother's been infected somehow. Because what the theory about it was, they said that the kryptonite dust that they used on Clark, it's like affecting Jordan, but in a different type of way. Because Clark doesn't get sick, like Superman doesn't get sick, but because Jordan is half, like half human, half Kryptonian, it affected him differently to the point where not only is he getting weaker, but it basically like gave him a cold. But it indirectly triggered his freeze breath into coming in, so now he has freeze breath. But basically he was just like, oh, I gotta go back to school because Sarah's supposed to do a performance, and they were just like, you ain't going nowhere, sit your ass. They like, sit your ass down. But then it got bad to the point where, because he still had the kryptonite dust in his system that that he inhaled being around his dad, it started like weakening him to the point where, because his freeze breath has now kicked in, it was freezing his lungs. And they were saying that if he doesn't do something soon, he could suffocate and, like choke himself. So Clark flies him to the Fortress of Solitude. And then, like his AI daddy basically told him, he was like, hey, we must burn the kryptonite from his system using the same methods that we used on you, Kal-El. So they hooked him up to they didn't hook him up to the machine, but like Clark basically like told him, he was like, yo, hold on tight, because we about to burn your ass. And then they took laser beams, they shot it through his body to burn out all the kryptonite. So they burnt out all the kryptonite. Everything was okay. Superman apologized to him because he's like, I didn't want this for you. And then he's like, it's not your fault. It's all gravy. So now back at the performance, because since Jordan dipped, Sara had nobody to do the performance with. So she got on stage, her parents showed up, everybody showed up. Her dad was all like happy and jolly. He's like, hey, everybody, top of the morning to you. But then when she got on stage and Jordan never showed up, she was just like, yo, I can't do the performance. But then her dad came out of nowhere, and I was like, he got up there awfully quickly. Her dad came out of nowhere. He started playing the guitar, and because her dad played the guitar, she was able to sing the song, because what Sara told us in the last episode, she can't go on stage without having somebody with her, because if she's up there by herself, she gets anxiety. That's why Jordan agreed to do it. But because her dad showed up, her dad had a guitar, he started playing the guitar, Sara sung her song, it was beautiful, everybody loved it, and all was well. The Asian woman who now works for Morgan Edge and is sipping the Morgan Edge Kool-Aid, her daughter was on stage, and she was singing a song next. So then, like Lana, Sara, the dad, I forget the dad's name, they were all standing together, just like, like Sara thanked her dad. She was like, thanks for saving me, Dad. And he was like, you're my little girl, no problem. So the whole family's hugging, everybody's embracing. And then while the Asian woman is watching her daughter perform, all of a sudden she just was like, huh? And then she just got up and bounced. And like, because we heard like this weird like sonar sound, and then she just got up and she bounced, and and then after that everybody watched her bounce, because even Lana, she was just like, hello, you about to bounce on you, like your daughter's in the middle of a performance and like you just straight up dipped. And then she's just like, oh, I had to take care of something, and she left. So then the husband was just like, what, that's kind of fishy, he's like, I'll go follow her and make sure everything's okay, which was very awkward because it's like, why are you going around following the next chick? Her husband's sitting right there. But he decided to do it. Lana didn't say anything, and then he dipped. So back at the Kent house now, Jonathan and Lois, like they're both there because, like the grandpa had showed up, the general showed up, and then both Lois and Jonathan gave him a piece of their mind because they were mad at him for creating the kryptonite smoke. And then at that moment, the Asian girl, along with some other random bald guy, knocked on Lois's door, and they basically tried to kill Lois. And then, we find out that, this like the experiment worked, where Morgan Edge gave the two of them Kryptonian powers. So now that the two of them have Kryptonian powers, Morgan Edge sent them to kill Lois, and the rest of the family. So like at that moment, they were trying to fight him. They were running or whatever. Then the general came in. He used the same kryptonite, the same kryptonite smoke on the Asian girl and the other dude. And then after that, he was just like, oh, get out of here. And then Jonathan was like, let's go to the barn, because before John Henry Irons took off, Jonathan basically stole all of his guns, and he hid all of his guns in the barn. So when the Asian girl and the bald dude came into the barn looking for them, Jonathan, he shot the gun, he blasted both of them like 50 feet back and knocked them out cold. Just then, Lana's husband showed up, and then when her husband showed up, he was just like, wow, boy, he was like, you sure know how to use that gun. And then he used his laser vision, and he burnt the gun and blew it up. And I was like, okay, so in the beginning of the episode, when somebody came into Morgan Edge's office, it was Lana's husband. Because even last week when he was talking to the assistant, and then he was just like, oh, it's a shame that Morgan Edge, didn't want me for the project. And then she was like, oh, we actually did want you for the project, but we were told by your wife that you didn't want to do it. So obviously after that, the two of them started talking, and then she convinced him to go through with the project. So now like Lana's husband has superpowers. So now it's just really awkward. And, at that moment, because they use like the click device to call Superman. Superman, he came back from the Fortress of Solitude. He ended up fighting everybody. He knocked everybody out. The general, the soldiers, and everybody showed up. Like the Asian girl, she dipped, like the other dude dipped, and then everything was okay. He was like, he couldn't find him anymore and everything. That was that. The general at that point said he was just like, yo, my troops and I, he's like, we're going to stay here. We're going to stay as long as it takes, to clean up the whole thing. Because he's like, I'm making you and the family my top priority now. Because Lois chewed him out earlier for not being there for him as a father. Where's Lucy Lane? Can we get Lucy Lane back? And then after that, Lana's husband, he came home, and then Lana was like, where the hell have you been? And then he was, then he told her, he was just like, listen, he's like, yo, something's wrong. Because he said, first of all, I remember being at the school. I remember being at the recital, and then all of a sudden I blacked out. And then after I came to, I was in the middle of the woods, like I was in the middle of the woods, like out of nowhere. I don't know how I got there. My ribs hurt. He was like, I'm kind of beat up. He was like, yo, I really think something's wrong. So now Lana has proof that what more, and then that's when it hit Lana. She was like, you took the Morgan Edge juice, didn't you? And then now Lana knows that something's really going on with Morgan Edge, and she's going to talk to Lois about it, like clearly in the next episode. But I want to see what's going to happen with the husband now, because now we got the Asian woman and we got the husband with superpowers. So I don't know if they can take these things away, or if he gonna die in the season finale, and that's gonna cause Lana to be even more emo because she lost her daddy. But I just see that coming. Like I just see like his death coming, and it's gonna turn like this whole big thing. Then the Kent boys started talking. He was just like, yo, it's cool that you got some freeze breath. Like they're just like, oh, then they was just like, oh, you gonna tell? And then they know that Lana's dad has superpowers now, so he was just like, yo, you gonna tell Lana what's going on? And he was just like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know what I was gonna tell her. So then and then at that point, Lois's boss called her, and she was like, hey, I was looking into some of those people, that you were talking about that had drunk the Morgan Edge juice earlier. And then she said, out of all of the test subjects, she said every single test subject that passed away was from a different town. But the only two that are still remaining that took the Morgan Edge juice, they are still here, but they are both from Smallville. And that's when it dawned on Lois, because, like they said, when Clark landed on Earth, there was a meteor shower for a week. So there's different types of kryptonite spread out, like throughout the Earth, like green kryptonite. We saw red kryptonite on Supergirl. We got X kryptonite. There are different types of kryptonite that spread out there. And they said that X kryptonite found its way into Smallville, and it's been seeped into the soil, into the town of Smallville for years. So for the last like 30 something years, that whole town has been exposed to X kryptonite radiation, which means any single person in that town, they like whatever the experiment is that Morgan Edge is using to turn them into Kryptonians, their bodies are able to handle it because they've been exposed to that X kryptonite for so many years. And then that's when Lois was just like, he doesn't need Smallville, the town, he needs the people, because the people can withstand his experiments, and the people are strong enough to be able for him to turn them into his Kryptonian soldiers. So now they know what the plan is. And then at that moment, Morgan Edge actually called Superman. He ended up putting out a signal like strong enough to call Superman. Superman showed up, and then he was just like, yo, bro, what's really good? And then that's when Morgan Edge was just like, oh, I think it's time I show you who I really am. He said, do you think I would give the whole world power without giving myself power as well? He was like, oh, but Kal-El, he was like, I had my power the same way you got yours when I arrived on this planet. And I was just like, oh shit, so he's not Morgan Edge. Because, the funny thing is, like, I knew he wasn't Morgan Edge from the beginning, because they had Morgan Edge, the character, on Supergirl. So I'm like, so unless Crisis turned him into a different person, are we supposed to, like, nah, that's how I always thought that was fishy, and they just confirmed that. So apparently whoever this Kryptonian person is, he's masquerading as Morgan Edge, and which I guess something happened to the real Morgan Edge. I don't know. But basically, he pretended to be Morgan Edge, and he's actually Kryptonian. And now he was just like, oh, it's time for you to drop to your knees, Kal-El, or brother, or whatever. Now the two of them are going to fight. And Lois even said to her daddy that shit that John Henry Irons was talking about. She was like, yo, it's on the way, because Morgan Edge, he's Kryptonian. He's already developed his Kryptonian army. The only question now is, how does Superman get brainwashed into joining the cause? And that's what we're going to find out next week. Or is it going to be Superman versus the world of Kryptonians? So that was it. And thank you for tuning in. I'm not sure how many episodes Superman and Lois is getting. I think it might be 13. I think it's 13. And if it is 13, we're almost there. Because this is like, what, episode like 9 or whatever. So we're definitely almost there. And I need the Morgan Edge backstory. And I need the Morgan Edge backstory. It's clear that Jordan is going to have something to do with like saving the day if Kal-El does turn evil. And I still think Jonathan's going to get a little superpowers at some point, whatever, even if he does accidentally go through the Morgan Edge experiment. But we'll see what happens. John Henry Irons is obviously going to come back in the season finale dressed as Steel. That's what I'm really waiting for. I'm just waiting for him to come back as Steel. And I'm waiting for John Diggle, Green Lantern, to show up on Superman as well, because this week coming up on the Arrow, on CWTV, it's supposed to be Diggle week. So I can't wait for Diggle to show up as well. So leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think of Superman and Lois so far. Let me know what you think of the Morgan Edge reveal as far as him being Kryptonian and where things go from there. Check me out on social media. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Instagram and always on YouTube. Share your questions, comments, and or concerns, and I'll respond to you guys so we can keep the conversation going for all the superhero goodness. So up and away, guys, as always. Until next time, for Superman and the Man of Steel, I'm out this.